This morning we have a guest speaker that I'm so grateful came, and we didn't even have snow for her to trudge through. Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of it out there, though. You can kind of see what it has been like. Um, but Laura Arneson is an assistant minister at the CSL Reno, and for about a year and a half, she became a prayer practitioner in 2009. Maybe Carol and I are about that too. Um, she facilitates a women's ministry called Women's Spirit once a month. And there we have time for fellowship, do spiritual work around a specific topic, including meditation, discussion, and experientials. She's lived in Reno for 50 years, still works for the Washoe County School District, where she's been a teacher for 24 years. And what grade do you teach?
I work with K-5.
Oh, wow. Okay. Elementary school.
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And she has a daughter that lives in Austin, Texas, with her wife and pets. And she enjoys hiking, being outdoors, reading, doing jigsaw puzzles, spending time with family, friends, and her 1-year-old golden retriever. There are few people here who are golden people. And the dog's name is Yogi. How cute. And she just loves being in service to our spiritual community. So let's welcome Laura this morning.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to see all of you. I was here in July, I think, and enjoyed being here with all of you, but it's nice to be back. So thank you for having me. Today our title is Vulnerability, Seeing and Being Seen. And so you guys have been really diving deep into vulnerability as Living Out Loud this month. And Reverend Pam has shared with you what vulnerability is, what it isn't, and the power of self-reflection, allowing and opening within yourselves to support your ability to express fully. And so then also what gets in the way of our vulnerability. And so today we're going to be exploring what vulnerability looks like within community and how that supports a community in thriving and expanding and expressing fully when we as individuals allow ourselves to see and be seen. So there's all sorts of different kind of communities, right, that we're a part of. I mean, we're part of our spiritual community. I'm a part of a school community. Children are part of a school community, which they don't always really have a choice about. They go to school where they're told to go to school. As adults, we have more of a choice about the communities that we engage in and become a part of. And maybe we have a work environment or an environment where we volunteer, or an environment where we practice certain forms of exercise, or groups that we do different hobbies with. So all of those things are different kind of communities that we engage in. So Charles Vogel, the author of The Art of Community, defines community as a group of individuals who share a mutual concern for one another. And on the great Google definition, is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. So Vogel says, when we see that others are concerned about our own welfare, we'll invest more in building community with them and we'll feel more connected. So just as Callie shared her beautiful song and a bit of her story, that's it, through our creative expression, through showing up in the world as with our gifts and our talents, that's a way that we can be seen. And then there's other ways of being seen through the opinions we have, through the thoughts and ideas that we share with one another, or perhaps don't. And then how we look at other people and see them, and can we accept them in their expression with their ideas, even if they're differing from ours, beyond our biases and our judgments and our comparisons. So Hay said, if I want to be accepted as I am, then I need to be willing to accept others as they are. Right? So it takes a lot of courage to show up and express authentically and fully and share our truth with people. Not in all spaces. We all have different areas where we feel more comfortable doing that, and different areas where it's more of a stretch or it feels a little bit more unsafe to do that. And we're not sure of what the reaction or response is going to be. So as I was researching this topic and looking for some stories, I came across a movie that I hadn't seen for quite a while, and it's called Freedom Riders. Maybe some of you remember it. It came out in the year 2007, and it was based upon a young teacher who went to work in the Los Angeles School District in Long Beach, California in 1994. And there had been a lot of upheaval in that area after the murder of Rodney King in 1992, a lot of riots. And so all of the integration and desegregation was at the forefront within the school district again. And they were enforcing integration of Latino and Hispanic, African American, Black students into schools that didn't have quite as much diversity. And so these students were going to a school in Long Beach, California, the Wilson Classical High School. And you know, Erin Gruel, she's an English teacher, and she's teaching 9th and 10th grade students. And she's just come out of college. She has this ideal vision of what her classroom is going to be like, and everybody's going to work together, and the students are going to love her, and she's going to teach all of this rich curriculum. And she comes into a classroom of students who have very, very difficult lives, something completely different from her and what she has she's had no exposure to. And they see her as a representation of a Caucasian white woman who is privileged and wants to keep them down, because that's the story, that's the experience that they've had. And she sees them as, she believes in them, but there's rival gang members in her class. There's homeless students in her class. There's students who can only read at a 4th grade level in her freshman class. They are unruly and they have fights and they refuse to work and they disrespect her and each other. And so this is not her vision of what her classroom was going to be like. But rather than give up, she keeps at it. And she wants to get to know her students. She wants to know who they are. And the administration and the other teachers within the staff, they are very disgruntled and displeased that these individuals are now coming to their school and have changed the environment and the population of this school. And so they actually refuse to help these students in many ways. They refuse to provide them with resources such as books because they're afraid they're going to destroy them or not bring them back. They haven't been taught, their curriculum has been dumbed down. So they haven't been taught things about the Holocaust and different things in history that would enrich their lives. And in many ways, they could find a relationship and an understanding of their own experience through these experiences in history. And so she creates this activity, and it's a line activity, and she puts a line down the middle of the room. And she starts with different questions, and she starts with the music that they like and different things from their cultures that and showing that she really is taking an interest in learning about them because she wants to see them. And she asks them, how many of you know what the Holocaust is? And nobody steps to the line. How many of you have experienced gun violence and know somebody who has died? And they all step to the line. How many of you have, well, she asked how many of you are part of a gang, and none of them would answer her, but because that was like a off limits topic. But she asked them all different kinds of things like that. How many of you have been in the juvenile detention system? How many of you are on probation? How many of you are? And they could see, because in the classroom, because they were rival gang members, they could start seeing how they were alike in many ways, even though they had these groups that they were a part of that told them they needed to be enemies. And so then she decided that she would give them each a journal. And she said, I want you to tell me your story. You can write whatever you want in your journal. Nobody's going to censure you. And if you want me to read it, I have a cabinet right here. You put these journals in this cabinet and it's going to be locked every night. So the only person that could read it is me. And these students started pouring out their stories of violence, of abuse, of neglect, of abandonment, of homelessness. And she started to be able to have empathy and compassion for their stories. And at the same time, this was very cathartic for them and healing, because she was really seeing them and accepting them for who they were. And they were also seeing her as this person who cared about them. She wasn't playing that role that they always saw in a white person. And so they started opening up and sharing and becoming interested in learning. And she got several extra jobs so that she could pay for books that they would be interested in, that they could relate to, books about students who are young people who were also in gangs. And the Diary of Anne Frank, they started learning about the Holocaust. And so this Classroom 203 became a safe haven for these students. It became their family, their community, even though on the outside, they had to pretend and act like they didn't like each other, because really they were still rivals. So through this meaningful curriculum, they became engaged in their learning process, in their writing. Their scores started to go up. They were really learning because she believed in their ability. She believed that they were worthy of being taught. She believed that they were worthy as human beings, that they were worthy of succeeding. And she stood up and fought for them. She took them on field trips. She had them engage in dinners and have conversations with Holocaust survivors. So they were being exposed to different things in their environment that nobody had ever exposed them to. And most of the teachers, unfortunately, didn't think they were worthy of. So she created a community of individuals who had a mutual concern for one another. And she also knew the power of story, the power of being seen and seeing others. Marianne Williamson says, as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give others the permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence actually liberates others. So she was a liberating presence in that school as she walked through her fears, advocating for these students. And in turn, they were able to walk through their fears and rise above their environment of their situation. Janet Mock, another author, said, I believe that telling our stories first to ourselves and then to one another in the world is a revolutionary act. So one of the most important things about community that draws us together are our values. For Center for Spiritual Living, we come together because we want to participate and share the values of this community. We want to be seen. It's kind of like, birds of a feather flock together, like attracts like. We want to be among people who share our values and the way we see the world and life. And for Center for Spiritual Living Reno, Reno, for all Centers for Spiritual Living, it's just common, it just flows from me. We all have different visions under that umbrella of the same vision, right? We believe in the individualized expression of spirit through each human being. We believe in one loving God. We believe in the power of prayer, and that when we speak our word, there is an impersonal law that acts upon that word. We believe in honesty and integrity and expressing authentically and respecting one another, accepting one another without judgment. And I was looking on your website, and I love your kind of triad that expresses what you believe. So the first one was passion. We are a loving and inclusive spiritual community that supports and inspires healing, prayer, and personal growth. We practice and teach spiritual principles through Sunday services, meditation classes, experiences in nature, and creative expression. And this is being your best. And then you're a resource engine. A divine source sustains us through our dedicated and creative people, socially relevant principles, and versatile sacred space within a magnificent natural setting. So recognizing that the divine is that ultimate resource engine for all of us. So honoring our oneness, honoring the ways in which we are all alike. And in a school environment, right, it's supposed to be about education, about valuing students, about lifting them up. And yet there's also implicit values that aren't, these are explicit values that we speak, and there's implicit values that can be experienced and have just as much power. And those are the underlying ones that come through in the way that we express ourselves. And it can be witnessed in how members relate to one another, right? This morning, there's people from Reno here, and everybody's welcoming them and saying they're glad they're here. Everybody welcomed me. So you're obviously a very welcoming community. And you expressed that when I came here. And Callie being here, she hasn't been here for a while. You expressed your excitement at her being here. Everybody's coming together when Reverend Pam's not here. So obviously you are expressing that implicit value of expressing and supporting the explicit values that you have. And sometimes, though, we don't always do that. Sometimes there could be gossip among people, right? And we maybe don't want to express ourselves fully, but we don't always want to go to the source. Or perhaps we have an opinion about something and it kind of colors the way that we see because it's different. And rather than speaking our truth about that, it kind of comes in the back door. So we have to be really careful about those implicit values and make sure that we're walking our talk, practicing what we say we believe and what we value and what's important to us, so that there's a congruence between what we are saying we believe in, what we value, and how we are expressing ourselves. Ernest Holmes said, "We see in each other the reflection or the manifestation of the everlasting life, and each is an individualized embodiment of it. Remember, the kingdom of heaven is already in us. We are in it. It is only as we are in harmony with it that we awake to it." So that harmony of coming together in our oneness and the values that we have. So there are times that vulnerability arises in community, right? Especially when we're going through our classes and we're working through false beliefs, or perhaps we're in the part of the leadership and there's ideas that come up that maybe there's some disagreement about, and we want to be able to speak our truth. And this can happen in any community that we're a part of. And in order for there to be true joy and that continuation of Spirit's full expression through us, it's important that we not tamp those things down, but find ways to express ourselves through respectful communication, right? To really say, this is what I believe and this is who I am. And it can take a lot of courage to do that. It can take a lot of courage to not have the same opinion as others. And it can also take a lot of courage to say, this is what's true for me. This is who I am. This is who I love. And this is what's true about my identity. Because there are those, for whatever reason, that don't want to see or acknowledge individuals in their authentic expression. And we see this going on in many ways, unfortunately, in our culture today, about people who are wanting to just express and be themselves. And it's very difficult for others to accept that they have a right to do that, which is very unfortunate. And often it's the minority groups that have the most difficulty with that. So anytime that there is a desire to express beyond the usual way, a call for change, or we truly want to be able to stand in a place of wanting, or can we stand in that place of truly wanting what's for the highest and best good? So it's important that in these places of discomfort, how can we handle these situations? So in our community, we have something that's called respectful communication. And I won't go through all of it, but it's basically that if you have a problem with somebody, you go to that person and you talk about that problem, and they do the same for you. If you make a mistake, you own your mistake and you make amends for that mistake that you've made. It's confidentiality. If you know something, if I know prayer practitioners practice this all the time, and the prayers that we get, the requests that we get, we don't share them with anybody. We don't talk about them with one another because those are confidential, and people open their hearts and trust that information with us, and we hold that sacred. And so can we do the same for everybody in our community, right? If somebody tells us something, we don't feel the need to go over and tell our friend about it, something confidential that we think, oh, they know them too. They won't mind if I tell. But do we know that that's true? Just honoring that confidentiality of friendships and family and people within our communities, and really holding that sacred. And if we have something that needs a resolution, a problem, can we bring that complaint forward with the desire to solve it, to find a resolution, rather than to just kind of wallow around in the muck, with a true positive, affirmative willingness to move into a better way of being if there's a problem or a concern. So in the book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which is a great book about from Jim Damer and Diana Chapman and Kaylee Warner, there's a quote that says, "One point of view is too small for the whole truth." So another thing that we need to be able to do in community is perspective taking. Can we take the perspective of somebody else and see it from their point of view, rather than needing to be right? Right? We like to be right. I like to be right. We all have that as human beings. We get attached to the outcomes. We get attached to our ways of seeing things. And a lot of times it has to do with what makes us feel comfortable and what makes us feel safe. It's connected to our identity a lot of times, right? So can we, from a place of awareness and love, move into seeing something from in another way? So the commitment 10 is, I commit to seeing the opposite of my story is as true or truer than my original story. I recognize that I interpret the world around me and give my stories meaning. So recognizing that we're the ones who put labels on things. We're the ones who decide in our own mind, according to our beliefs and our perceptions, how things are unfolding. So they have a line, and they consider that above the line is you're looking with love and awareness and open curiosity. Below the line, you're looking from a place of anger and fear and comparison. So below the line is, I commit to believing my stories and the meaning I give them as truth. So there's actually research that shows that, lost my place, that when we can reframe our subjective perspective and be in a place of willingness, that we actually are happier. We're actually happier when we can look at it from the other side and see how somebody else is looking at something. So there's a powerful practice that they talk about, which is taken from the work of Byron Katie. Many of you are familiar with her and her 4 questions. And so she says that these 4 questions can be asked in order to help herself. She created them for herself, and for others to examine their beliefs and their stories. and that cause us actual suffering, because the stories that we tell ourselves actually cause us suffering, right? So the first question is it true? Can you absolutely know it's true? How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And who would you be without that thought? So if we have a belief that says we're not enough, we can ask, is it true? Do we know that that's true? If I believe that, I value it, I believe that God is all there is and that I am an individualized expression of God, is it true that I'm not enough? And how do I react? What happens inside of me when I believe that thought? So, when I first became a minister, and many years before that, I was terrified of public speaking. Terrified. In high school, I would stand at the podium and could hardly get my words out because I was so nervous. My vocal cords would shake. So I'm just saying this because I had to go through a process of really exploring, finding my voice and expressing my voice, and going through this, the stories that I would tell myself, well, I don't have a right to stand up there and speak. Well, is that true? I don't have anything important to say. Is it true? So that was a place in my life where I had to really question those beliefs. And through a process of doing that, through spiritual practices, through taking many courses, through practicing, it has become something that I actually really enjoy, and that most people give me very positive feedback around. So it can cause, when we apply these questions to our life, it can really help us to shift our perspective around things and see how they're not, the truths that we hold are not necessarily true. So another thing that she does is called the turnaround. So if you have a statement about something, you can turn it around. And so the example, I just made this one up. Joan leaves me out of conversations. Turn it around to the opposite. Joan includes me in conversations. And you are encouraged in this practice to find three examples of when this is true. So you can apply this to anything in your life. Turn it around to yourself. I leave myself out of conversations. When do I not speak up? When do I not express myself? When do I not think that I'm worthy of doing something that just doesn't, when I leave myself out of a conversation, when I don't share my ideas? And then, how is this statement as true or truer about myself than the original statement? Find three examples again. So our invitation through being seen, or seeing and being seen, as we think about these ideas, is to just check within. It requires that we really be present to what we believe, what our judgments are, what our thoughts are, what our, not only about ourselves, but about others. And not that they're all, I'm not saying they're all negative. We all have obviously many good things that we see in ourselves and others, but just checking inside and being aware of where we need to do our work when it comes up, so that we can be fully present, because we are here to express the magnificence of God. And God expresses individually through each of us, right? And we're here to express that God's self, to shine our light, to be fully present in our creative expressions and in our relationships and in our work and all that we do, to show up as the truth of our being. So Julianne O'Connor, another author, when you let me see you, you give me permission to be seen. And of course, from Brene Brown, who is just like the ultimate vulnerability person, who knows so much and has brought so much information to our culture and really helped shift these ideas around vulnerability and shame and courage and living with wholeheartedly. We cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. And when we honor the spiritual connection from that grows offering, that grows with trust, respect, kindness, and affection. I typed that wrong. So just shine your light, see others shining their light, and appreciate the differences that you see in yourself and others, and be fully present and witness the expression of God all around us. So let's take this into prayer. And so I stand here in this sacred space, acknowledging that one infinite power and presence of the divine, knowing that truth of love, of wholeness, of oneness, of unity, of beauty, that is the expression of myself and all here. For I know that I am an individualized expression of the one. And as I know this for myself, I know this for each person in this room, for each person on Zoom, for each person in this community, and all of the ways in which we touch others in our lives. Every person we look upon is a beautiful being of the one. And so I know that we are all expressions of love, expressions of light, of oneness and wholeness, here to shine our beauty and our magnificence, our uniqueness, our individualized creative selves. And how wonderful this is. What a wonderful, beautiful gift that we have been given to bring our voice, to bring our presence, to bring our values and our beliefs into whatever space that we have been divinely called to. For I know that spirit is that activity and action of our lives. And through the power of our spiritual practices, through our beliefs, we can show up knowing that we are always in our right place at the right time with the right people, trusting that we are guided from that intuitive space of knowing within to be exactly who we are, to see others exactly as they are, beyond what the ego would define, what is acceptable or right or correct, just knowing that we are all here as the expression of this one life. And so it is perfect. It is beautiful. And we are so, so blessed. And so I know that as each of us go out into our lives and our communities, in the spaces upon which we live, in our families, among our friends, that we connect on a deep level. Our hearts are open, and that the love of God is the love of each of us that expresses in, through, and as who we are. And so in doing this, we are all blessed and uplifted. And for this, I am just so grateful for the magnificence, the graciousness of spirit. And I release my word into the law, knowing fully and completely that it is done. And so it is. Amen.